Okay, let's move forward to the actual topic of this webinar, that is the cloud skills the industry is begging for. Just to start, I would like to share with you some numbers. So the 2015 in a review, this image we found in a Forbes article, and as you can see, there were over 18 million cloud jobs globally in 2015, and that is 100 positions per qualified cloud professional only in the US. So despite the high cloud adoption and demand for skills, CompTIA's annual cloud report survey found that many of the respondents said that they lack an understanding of basic cloud concepts. Things like what is cloud and what is the difference between public and private cloud, for example, very basic competences. 40% of the firms adopting cloud experienced a complete shift in their business strategy. This was a major challenge to shift actual business processes and practices with the strategic changes. 40% had a challenge from the cloud learning curve. Up to 34 said vendor lock-in was a big problem, as you can imagine. 44% had to move their original cloud infrastructure or application, very costly, to fix issue missed in the initial migration change of strategy. And 56% had challenged developing cloud expertise internally. Let's run another poll. And this is about if you have experience in organizing or deploying a cloud solution. Let's see what you have to say about it. So, what service model is your client organization most likely to implement? SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, combination of all the above? Let's see what everybody's answering. It's always very interesting to see what the real people out there have to say about this. Okay. So, interesting. Let's see, let's share the results. So apparently nobody had something to do with platform as a service, or maybe with combination of the all. But the most popular is definitely software as a service. Okay, let's move forward. Next poll, next question. What is the largest barrier your organization or client face moving to the cloud? Let's see. Let's launch the poll. Cost, interoperability, security, reduced functionality, portability. Okay, let's give it a couple of seconds more. Yeah, I see that at the beginning everybody was clicking cost, cost, cost. Now I see it's a bit more variegate. Let's close this poll. Let's share the results. Sorry if I'm a bit quick, but we have a lot of questions and a lot of things to talk, so we don't want to lose too much time on the polls. So, but as you can see, reduced cost, scalability, definitely the most popular. Very good. Let's move forward. Okay, so let's move to the interview to the panelists. Now I'm going to ask some question to Ryan and Bertrand. If you have some question, please don't hesitate, just chat with me. I will try to organize the whole thing, so let Ryan and Bertrand speak and at the same time forward to them your question and run some poll at the same time. So in case you don't get your question answered immediately, just wait and we will put your question at the end, okay? So, Ryan, Bertrand, can you hear me? I cannot hear you. Bertrand, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Now I can hear you. You were on mute. Ryan, can you hear me now?
I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Perfect. Now I can hear you as well. So, guys, let's talk a little bit about yourself shortly. Tell us a bit about yourself. How did you end up in the cloud? Ryan, can you start?
Sure. I've been an IT professional for approximately 15, 20 years now, and strong background in IT operations, working on the internal side with various companies, running their IT departments. I've held almost every role in the IT field, from a support analyst to a systems admin, systems engineer, IT manager, IT director, and found myself in the consulting world approximately 5 years ago. And how did I end up in the cloud? I mean, for me, it was a natural evolution. I think if you're going to stay current in our industry, this is where everything's being pushed. And not only is it a natural evolution for me as a consultant, but I think this is where my clients demand me to be. Every assessment that we look at, every type of solution assessment, where clients are looking at new models or new solutions, you got to have a cloud option in there, right? It might not always be the best fit, but I think at the very least you have to be looking at it, or else you're not doing your job. So it's just a place where everything is going at this point, and if you're not looking at the cloud, then I'd be questioning what exactly are you looking at. So. Just on, I'm not sure if we can hear you if you're taking over at this point.
Yeah, so
Okay.
maybe I will take over, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll give Bertrand
hi everyone.
a chance to come in.
Hi everyone, I'm Bertrand. Sorry for my French accent. I am a French-speaking person from France and then migrated to Canada. I am specialized in IT for market exchange and financial institutions. I've been working also for aerospace industry, and now I'm also in a consulting role within KPMG. Mostly my activities are cybersecurity and cyber risk, and of course I got into the cloud because I had to do cyber analysis of cloud solutions. So when there was this big migration 5 years ago, beginning 5 to 6 years ago, to the cloud, there was a need to understand what was the real risk and the real challenges behind the cloud solution chosen by IT sectors. And to be really honest, behind cloud was really a buzzword well chosen, as all this risk analysis were pretty nebulous, to be really honest. So that's quite the experience I will share today.
Thanks for sharing, Bertrand. So let's move forward. Okay, let's start again with Ryan. What challenges have you seen in practice with respect to cloud implementations? Ryan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Sorry, I think I was muted there for a second. So I think there's a lot of challenges out there. You know, typically I like to start with the people challenges, and I see political and social challenges inside organizations. I think number one, people are concerned about their critical systems and their data in someone else's hands. Not only is that the data and their systems in someone else's hands, but it's often in a multi-tenant environment, right? So you're not only sharing your data center with just your critical systems and data, but you're sharing it with organizations from across your region and across the globe. And I think there's a lot of concern around that, a lot of apprehension around that. And I think from a social side too, there's the issue that IT's role is evolving, and it's evolving rapidly because of the cloud. So I think there's a lot of apprehension in IT departments that I see, where folks are a little bit nervous about the unknown. They don't know what their role and their responsibilities are going to look like if they go to the cloud. They're used to traditionally supporting IT within their data center and have their arms wrapped around it, and for their role to evolve with someone else to help do that. And again, I don't think it eliminates their role. I think their role just evolves to a higher level versus if you're managing the data center environment and the infrastructure in the environment, you just move yourself up that stack to more value-added role to the business. I also see a lot of challenges and misconceptions. That's why I gained certification with CCC, is because there was a lot of ambiguity about what the cloud really is and what it is not. So, I think for me, it's digging in and really having a good taxonomy and a good framework and a good structure to understand what the cloud is. And it's really about the attributes. It's about the on-demand, self-service, rapid flexibility, measured service, that widespread accessibility and mobility, the pooling of resources. It's not so much the service models like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Those have been around for a long time before the cloud was even introduced, but it's those attributes that are really the misconception that people don't understand. That's the value in the cloud. Cost is another big challenge. I think there's a misconception, and it showed a little bit in the poll that I think people look immediately to the cloud for cost savings, and sometimes that absolutely is the case. But especially at scale, I think there's a lot of situations where it is just more cost effective to do it in-house. With that said, though, the attributes that the cloud can bring to your business, such as rapid flexibility, I think some of the times that outweighs the cost of putting your applications and services in the cloud. So, that's something that can add a lot of value to the business. Another challenge is portability. These applications and services are entrenched in data centers, and getting them out of that data center and into the cloud. I kind of envision it like a game of Jenga. If you're familiar with that puzzle game with the stacking blocks, if you move one piece incorrectly, the whole thing collapses. So there's applications are entrenched in data centers with different interdependencies, different integration points, and it's not that easy to just take an application and just stick it out in the cloud. It sounds, all the vendors want you to make it sound like it's easy, but there's a lot more complexity involved. And then finally, I think it can be just overwhelming. I think there comes initiatives that we have to get to the cloud, but it's something that you have to take piece by piece. It's got to take a lot of planning, and again, going back to that Jenga puzzle, you have to move things in the right order to make sure that everything is done properly. You have to wrap that around budgets. You have to wrap that around asset life cycles for software and hardware. There's all kinds of moving pieces to go on. It's not even as easy as just a data center forklift, right? I mean, I think we've all been there where we've had to maybe upgrade or move to a different data center. That in many terms is much easier because you're often moving physical assets from location to location. But when you're moving logical assets, I think it becomes much trickier and much more complex. And I think clients and IT organizations just get overwhelmed by that complexity. And I think a certification like the CCC provides helps you tackle complexity. It helps you break it down, get a good taxonomy in place for describing various components, and then a good approach to methodically going about and tackling those problems and taking it piece by piece. And it's definitely doable, but it is a big challenge as your picture there. I think that's the Matterhorn is alluding to.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan, for your.
No problem.
Yeah, and Bertrand, what's your opinion about what are the challenges that have you seen in implementing cloud?
Yeah, I'd like to rebound on what Ryan just said. I do agree on what he just said. Ecosystem definition is really, ecosystem of data is really a key difficulty and a key challenge when speaking with the cloud, because within the last 10 years, and especially I'm talking about security, we had big challenges of security in order to raise maturity for identity access management, in order to make log correlation, log consolidation in order to understand more and more how the whole infrastructure is breathing. And I do like the analogy of Ryan speaking about Jenga game, because it is what it is. I mean, we were trying within security to put in place some processes of access management and so on and so forth, and getting more and more maturity on those ones. And the cloud did not help to keep this maturity at the same level. On the one hand, that's for security process, and on the other hand, I mean, with the data ecosystem, DLP, so data loss prevention, was also one of the big trends in security we really are missing now with cloud computing. And being certified permits to rationalize this challenge that really looks like monsters now. And when I'm talking about cloud computing, I usually, I'm very happy to provide an analogy, because many people think because I'm in security, I'm against the cloud concept. Just a reminder, cloud concept is, I was born in 1961, so 10 years before the first email. So it's older even than the first email and the first physical infrastructure. So the concept in itself is pretty old. And I'm not against the cloud. I'm just saying cloud is like a Ferrari. It's agile. It's quick. It's responsive. But if you don't know how to drive, or you usually drive, you don't know how to pilot, then do not use a Ferrari, because you will crash yourself into a wall, because you don't have sufficient maturity when you drive. And many people see that as a nonsense, because if they need to raise the maturity to get into the cloud, then the cloud is less interesting in terms of flexibility. But that's quite the due diligence that need to happen. And now my specialty in this activity is really to analyze the contracts and the controls that the cloud provider brings on the table, and be able to compare them, because it's great to be able to compare functionalities of the cloud, but believe me, devil is really in the details. When you get into the contracts, the right to audit, or even the kind of logs that you will get at the end of the day. So I mean, I think the key challenges there is because there is a false understanding that cloud is only flexibility and only agility. There is a lack of due diligence happening, and because it seems to be really the innovation and the trend, we just don't get into the real study that we would normally do with a normal outsourcer, and we are just getting over it. So the Jenga game is not only on the IT infrastructure, the complex ecosystems and the spreading of the ecosystems of data, but also in the contracts themselves, and the way to keep the security posture on the same level.
Thanks, Bertrand. And do you agree with the statistic that we showed earlier? Like, for example, that 1 every 100 job position was filled. So it's so difficult to find cloud experts, or at least not experts, but people with enough skills to, for example, compare a good vendor contracts.
On my side, I think I would agree, because it's pretty difficult. Let's take an example. Let's take Office 365 solution, for instance, and let's understand the complexity behind the integration. So if we're talking about Office 365, Office documents are really the corporate ecosystem. So you will find any kind of business unit data into your Office 365 solution. So you cannot really segregate the ecosystem with your cloud solution. In comparison with, let's say, an HR cloud solution, will keep HR data into it. So you are able to segregate the ecosystem of data with the cloud solution. So for the example of Office 365 will be cross-border and cross business units, you will have to make a study and an understanding of the integration that is cross business unit and cross business models. So I think the difficulty is to find really people that are able to understand this Jenga game, like Ryan was saying, and on the other hand, the business needs that are evolving related to regulation, related to ecosystems of data, and related to, I'm pretty sure, access management at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Hey, Tristan, can I just echo something Bertrand said?
Of course, tell me, Ryan.
Yeah, I think it's an important point for the audience that I'm currently doing an assessment for a customer across about 8 of their applications on going to the cloud, and I think Bertrand's point to the contracts and the devil's in the detail is a critical one, because I think there's diving into those details, folks may uncover a lot of things that they're not aware of. For example, a lot of these providers out there offer 99.9x whatever service level agreements on availability and uptime. But if you delve into some of these contracts, what you find is the penalty for not hitting those service level agreements is often sometimes around 10 or 20% reimbursement. So at that point, I mean, that doesn't give me a warm, fuzzy feeling that says, oh, they're really committed to keeping my applications and services up and running in the cloud, because that's great. They say they'll be up 99.99 whatever % of the time, but they're only giving that a little bit of face time. In reality, they're not backing that up. They're only going to say, they're going to give me 10% back of my money. That's really not something that is a true backed SLA. And also to the other point of apples to apples, I think when you're talking about auditing and being able to have visibility into your environment, for example, when you're running software as a service, they may be able to provide you application level details to the audit logs, but a lot of times you can't see what's going on behind the curtains. They won't let you get down into the layers of platforms and infrastructure and system level audit logs, which might be critical for some organizations. So getting into those details and doing a good assessment before you get into bed with a partner in the cloud is very critical. And I think Bertrand made an excellent point on that. And I just wanted to kind of hammer that home for the audience that's really an important thing to look at when you're assessing cloud solutions.
Yeah. And so the next question is very, very well linked, I think. So what solutions were used to move the initiative forward despite these challenges? So for us, the most obvious solution will be training. But of course, in reality, there's often never enough time and budget for train all the people on board. So Ryan, what do you have seen as what solution can be adopted?
Yeah, I think taking a very methodical approach. I think training is absolutely critical. I think that's one of the foremost solutions. But I also think that having, again, a reference architecture, building a reference architecture around a solution, and then assessing multiple solutions against that reference architecture. So I think a lot of folks, they'll see a solution out there in the market and they'll go straight to that solution. That solution may be a good fit in some aspects and it may be a poor fit in other aspects. And I think the process of building out your requirements, building out your business requirements, building out your technical requirements, building out your functional requirements, and going out to a formalized assessment, whether that's a formalized RFP or whatever your organization uses to select new initiatives and new technologies. I think that's absolutely critical. And then the third piece of it, between training, being methodical, the third piece is just planning. There's, again, going back to the Jenga puzzle, there's going to be a ton of planning involved. There's going to be a lot of careful moves that have to be made There's going to have to build a lot of different test environments, do proof of concepts, and it's not something that we can just flip the switch and go do immediately. And it's got to be vetted. It's got to be vetted at the business level. Again, ensuring that all the compliance is there with the business. It's got to be vetted at the functionality level. Ensuring that a lot of times when you move to a cloud service, you lose some functionalities and features. Sometimes you gain some functionalities and some features. But again, being methodical and good planning, along with good education and training, I think those are the pinnacles to coming over those challenges.
Yeah. And Bertrand, in moving, like for example, the example that you mentioned before about Office 365, what kind of solution can you give us an example of what you used to move forward?
Sure. And just to make echo on what Ryan just said, I mean, I heard from my management with his Office 365 solution initiative was really the false consensus that, okay, it's Office, we are just moving it somewhere else. What is the challenge? There's no challenge there. There's no issue. There's no analysis to be done. I mean, it's still the same solution, moved somewhere else. And it's not as easy, unfortunately, like moving a vendor from somewhere to somewhere else. It's really getting into the details of the analysis and making sure that there is a real understanding on what you will be operating on a day-to-day basis. So how you will conduct your incident management. I mean, when you have Office on your laptop and when you have Office in the cloud, how do you make forensics, for instance, in case of an incident? So that's really key changes. And the way we went, the way we solved it was really to ask ourselves questions. And one of the most critical and difficult one to answer was, how do we get out from the cloud? So if we want to change our cloud solution at some point, and because it will be our corporate confidential documents, how do we get out from that? So with Office 365, of course, one of the Word document that we would be facing is draft of contracts, draft of acquisition, draft of fusions, so legal contracts, personal information, industrial secrets, and how do you make sure that your cloud provider is destroying your documents? How do you have this assurance? How do you get the signature at the end of the paper? So that's a key thing, and especially when you are in an economy that is protected by your government. So
it is an issue that is very common.
Yeah. So that was quite the challenge, and in fact, all is going down to the contract level. So, and we faced a new challenge, which was not as expected at all when the vice president, the IT vice president, was thinking about cloud solution, is to get IT knowledgeable people within the legal department in order to vulgarize and request some new requirements, new operational requirements, and especially when talking about litigation and incidents. And the only way to solve this challenge was really to deal with the contract.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Bertrand. So let's move forward, and I will run another poll. And this sounds maybe easy to answer, but it's good to know what the audience think about it. Let's launch the poll. Do you think training will help with the challenges you've seen in practice? So be honest, you know that we are a training framework foundation, but hit us if you think that it is not important. I'm gonna close the poll, share the results. Okay, Very good from my side. Happy to hear that everybody agrees on the fact that training may help. So let's move forward. What do you think training would have helped with the challenges? Well, like why, Ryan and Bertrand? Like, let's start with Ryan. Why do you think training would have helped? Like Bertrand was mentioning the vendor lock-in issue. Like I can imagine that a lot of folks out there, they have a very technical education or maybe even vendor certification. So how do you avoid this kind of problem?
Right. I think the training again gives you a framework to assess in. So when we're doing cloud assessments, we always have a framework that we assess each of the solutions against. It's a very generalized framework. It's not a requirements framework. It's more of a these are the categories and the domains we're assessing against. Because again, if you have that training on a comprehensive level, and you know all the areas to look at, all the kind of the mats to look under, the doors to peek behind. That's what kind of a non-vendor based training framework like CCC gives you is really that normalized methodology to systematically go through and assess each solution and find all those gotchas out there. So I think that's where the training, because if you don't have that training, you don't know what doors to look behind or what rugs to look under. It's again things that will get missed, and then devil is in the details, and you'll get into bed with that vendor and that provider. And as Bertrand said, it's an excellent question to ask: is once we get in, can we get out? How do we get out? And what's our exit plan? Because things could rapidly go downhill and not work out the way that the organization had anticipated.
Yeah, like Bertrand, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I think I just would like to add that I do agree with Ryan with the fact that we need to look behind every single door of the solution to understand what's behind it. But there is it's not only IT that have to do this work. As I mentioned before, there is a lot of controls, IT controls that were before within the IT environment and the IT landscape, that it has moved contractually to the legal landscape or to the supply chain landscape. So I think all these folks should be able to speak the same language, and the only way to speak the same language is to train for this language. So I think the training has a key job in this challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And Ryan, do you have any idea of a specific role, like a job role or a specific area in a company where you think training is needed the most?
I think at this level, I would definitely at the managerial system architect, solution architect, enterprise architect, whatever you want to call them, someone who's got wide-ranging enterprise responsibility. I think that is the best location to have this type of training. The folks that are a little bit farther down in more specialized roles, a lot of times the vendor-specific training might be a little bit more valuable to them. But I think those who do a lot of strategic planning, who are responsible for a lot of architecture, for design, I think these areas are critical for having this type of training, because you're in that position, that role where you have to see everything. You have to understand what are the security implications? What are the cost implications? What are the functionality implications? And so being that kind of visionary position, that visionary role needs to be standardized. It needs to be normalized. And, that's where something like the CCC training comes in and really helps define that role and, again, helps that person, get the breadth of all the requirements and make sure that the solution fits all those requirements.
Okay, thanks. Let's launch another poll about this kind of topic. So what type of training do you find?
Tristano.
Yeah.
Sorry, I would just like to add something.
Yeah.
Is also the fact that behind a cloud provider there is a lot of uh, understanding that it may be not only a cloud provider. This cloud provider may be using PAS or an IAS himself, and so on and so forth to increase his availability. And this is also a challenge because the Jenga game is becoming more and more difficult because inside each pieces there may be more and more pieces to understand and to make sure that the interoperability is happening on all the line, and it cannot be done by cross certification, unfortunately, because certification is not at this level right now.
Okay, thanks.
I had a specific example for that. That's an excellent point. I had a client who was a software as a service provider, and they leveraged an infrastructure as a service provider to host their application and their platforms. And what their customers and what they didn't know is that their infrastructure as a service provider hadn't even gone through any type of SOC compliance. And so, you know, you might be dealing with one entity on the front, but as Bertrand said, you might not have any idea who you're dealing with on the back end, but that entire infrastructure stack and platform stack is supporting your critical applications and services. So you need to dig in there, and you need to make sure that you understand who you're dealing with and who you're contracting with.
Exactly. I mean, the training is key to ask yourself the right questions, for the whole workflow, for the whole architecture.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. So let's see the results of this poll that has been running in the background so far. I think everybody almost voted. Yeah, somebody's still voting. Okay, let's close the poll, share the results. Yeah, so combination technical and vendor neutral training is probably the key. So let's move forward. And do you experience a difference between the application of technical and vendor neutral training on the job? We're speaking about the application of these competences. Ryan, what's your opinion about it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, you know, vendor neutral, or I'm sorry, vendor training or technical training is highly focused on the solution, right? But IT evolves so rapidly, and solutions come and solutions go, and you know, the good ones stick around, and they evolve, and you can evolve your training with that solution. But I think the vendor neutral training is so critical because it teaches you good foundational structure that can be career lasting, right? I mean, you may be able to live within a solution for your career, you may not. But if you have a good foundation of vendor neutral training, you know, whether it's enterprise architecture, whether it's a cloud computing architecture certification, I think these are the types that really give you the raw tools you need that you can adapt to any solution. It doesn't matter what vendor it's going to. You can adapt those vendor neutral solutions to anything. And again, it helps you assess the different solutions out there and not be so just narrowly focused on one type of vendor, one type of solution. On the other hand, in some of the more specific and narrow roles in an organization, sometimes that technical training is very key, and it does come into good play. But you know, I see at the architecture and design role, I think those folks really need to focus on those vendor neutral training for their job.
Yeah, thanks. And Bertrand, you have been working with Office 365, but do you have any experience in vendor neutral applications?
Yeah, and I think I have nothing really to add on what Ryan says. I'm completely in agreement with 100%. So, but yeah, I mean, from my perspective, vendor neutral training and specific IT guidance or IT framework are really a key to keep the eyes on the architecture, and architecture in this game is the key changer. So it is really the turnkey, and we are missing good IT architects. We are missing also good enterprise architects, and I do agree with Brian. Those guys need to follow vendor neutral training and vendor neutral framework. Yeah.
Okay, guys. I'm going to launch another poll now, and it's about how cloud training affected your career. If you have any cloud training in your past, what happened? Like, it's been a backbone of your career, so you've been promoted, or you didn't have any cloud training, so you don't see it as a problem, or you're attending now some training, but you have high expectation maybe, but you still don't have direct experience about it. Okay, I see that almost everybody finished the vote. Let's share the results. Okay, so everybody in our audience had cloud training. That's really positive. So we can move forward. And this is a question directly for you, Ryan and Bertrand. How has being certified and demonstrating this qualification affected your career? So I can imagine that Ryan, as a consultant, needs to prove on daily basis the fact that you have the right knowledge and the most spread knowledge as possible, not only the deepest. Is that correct, Ryan? Ryan, I cannot hear you.
I'm sorry about that. I had myself on mute. I'm a big proponent of balance in someone's career, and so I think it's a balance between having those hands-on, in the dirt operational experience, but also you need balance with the high-level training, and again, it broadens your spectrum and it broadens your perspective on things. Because a lot of times when we're in our day-to-day operations, we only see what's in front of us, right? But a good certification program broadens that spectrum and broadens that horizon and makes you look at other things that you haven't thought about or haven't been exposed to in your current job set. So that balance is critical of not only being able to do, but to learn and then take what you've learned and then apply that. For me specifically, it provides a good feeling for the client to know that not only have I gone out there and done these things, but again, that I've got a large organization behind me that says I have knowledge in this area. I think that makes them feel very comfortable because, again, sometimes I'm meeting these clients for the very first time, initial projects. We don't have an established relationship there. And it's just an added layer of trust. It helps them get a little bit more comfortable with you and your capabilities. And it's a good validation for them, and for me, it's if I'm not cloud certified and looking at all the different solutions out there, then I'm not doing my job properly. And but when you do that, when you bring all these different solutions back to a client and you assess them and you break them down into manageable bite-sized pieces that they can understand, they realize you've done your due diligence. They realize that you've been methodical in your process and that you're really concerned not just of pushing a vendor solution, but pushing a solution that will help their organization. And that builds trust, and that trust builds relationships with clients. And those relationships are what are key. I mean, that's what a long-lasting career is built around, is those relationships. So, yeah, I think it's absolutely critical to my career.
Bertrand, for you, you are working a lot with risk and security at KPMG. Do you see a benefit in gaining a certification, or because I see that you have a lot of certification, not only from the Cloud Credential Council, of course. Like, why you took so many?
um, yeah, I agree also with Brian on this one. I mean, it's critical for my career because it does not prove anything because it doesn't change you and doesn't change your competencies on a day-to-day basis, and that's a key thing. But what it does, it provides you with a raw basis that is really different from your colleague. I mean, I will give the example of another one. Another certification I've got is Certified Information Security Management from ISACA, and the I can feel the same added value between the PCSM and the CISM. The added value is really that you have a method to speak, to understand, and to analyze what's going on. And more and more these days, I'm seeing customers coming to me and with not pre-cloud challenges, but post-cloud challenges. So we were talking about the Jenga analogy, and I think it will be the analogy of this session, but it's a great analogy to be really honest, and I'm happy that Ryan gave us this one. But when a customer comes with the Jenga world that is not controlling anymore, missing security postures, security controls, not being able to harmonize its security posture around its cloud providers, not being able to force his cloud provider to enforce controls and so on and so forth on his operational day-to-day operation, is support. But when I've got these customers coming to me and I can tell them, okay, this is a big elephant. Your elephant is in danger now. So how do you eat an elephant is by bits and bytes, and it's slowly. So before being overwhelmed by the cloud solution you've just stacked, I mean, get certified, because you will have the calm and the method to get over it. And I think that's a key thing. And when you say that to a customer, saying, I'm not afraid with the monster you've just created with your cloud monster. I'm not afraid with that. And I'm not afraid to do a full risk analysis and to show you what's happening now with your multiple cloud providers and your multiple cloud challenge. When you can say that to a customer, I mean, there's a real added value on the assurance you will get. Yeah.
Thanks, Bertrand. I received some questions from our audience. So the first one I want to ask to our panelists is, which skills need in cloud is the most in demand? And like where you can find a market. I think we are speaking about job opportunities here. Ryan, what's your opinion about what's the most precious cloud skill at the moment?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would probably go back to the poll question that we looked at. Where are people looking to deploy, or where their organization or their clients are looking to deploy in the cloud? Is it software as a service, or the platform as a service, is it infrastructure as a service, or is it a combination of all of those? And I think the prevailing answer was a combination of all three of those things. So it's hard to say where the specialty lies. I think there's going to be required specialists in all of them. I mean, you're going to need required specialists at the infrastructure level with folks that are deep understanding of technologies like VMware, Microsoft Hyper-V, and the ability to multi-tenant folks across infrastructure and fabrics. But you're also going to need folks at the platform layers, just like we have middleware and database administrators and designers now. You're going to need those folks at the platform layers, and then at the software level, you're going to need folks for application integration and application development. So, I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I think any of those areas is going to be a value add, and I think it's where do you want to be as a professional is where you should, kind of focus, developing your skills.
Yeah. Bertrand, do you have something to add to this?
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, the cloud migration has not been done in once. It was not residually. It has been big bangs, but to be really honest, I've seen no company going in the cloud big bang from a day to another. So the migration is like any other migration. It's hard. It's difficult. Again, devils are in the details. So when you get to move data and move processes, it's not easy as proposed by the vendor. And I agree totally with Brian in this because migration was not easy. You will see you will need all the jobs at all layers. Yeah.
And I think Bertrand would be able to echo this, but there's always a shortage in well-trained, well-versed security professionals out there. We see it all the time, and I think as we've seen in the media and as we've seen, in day-to-day operations, I think security is on the forefront of a lot of CIOs, IT directors' minds. So I think focusing on security in the cloud, security within your own organization, I think is an excellent area to be in as well.
Yeah, I agree, Ryan, because let's take the right example I've got in mind is really identity access management. Before getting into the cloud, getting the maturity level of an organization to a stage where you are doing access recertification on a real proper way and periodic way. I mean, all that is not happening anymore with the cloud or with a really deficient maturity. So a lot of security processes are lacking of maturity within the cloud solution, and also for local correlation. I mean, the understanding how your infrastructure is breathing begins to be a challenge.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we are running out of time, unfortunately. 1 hour has passed. So we received other questions. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to answer to all of them. I will forward your question, guys, to the panelists, and they will be so kind to answer to me, and I will forward the same to you. So please, let me thank you again, and let's see you for next month for the next webinar for the Cloud Credential Council.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.